On the expiration of the memorandum of understanding, are you any closer today to reaching a final deal to end Iran's nuclear program?
Well, they want to make a deal, but they're not going to make the kind of a deal that I feel is necessary. Look, we're in there for one reason. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. You understand that? Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon. And right now, them building one after what we did previously with the B-2 bombers, going to be a long time behalf. But Iran cannot have, it's very simple, they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Last week you said that you would soon declare the Strait of Hormuz to be a territory of the United States. Could you elaborate?
Well, I just think it's a great idea, yeah. I mean, we control it. We control it with the blockade. We have a blockade. We control it with the blockade. And I like the idea of declaring it a territory. We have total control over the strait. Now, they can be a nuisance. They can put a mine in the water, and people don't like having mines hit their billion-dollar ships, et cetera. But the blockade has been very effective. And, we're taking out, now maybe that will stop, or maybe it'll open up even further, but we're taking out millions of barrels of oil a week. If you look at the kind of numbers that we're doing, the strait is open, and the oil prices are coming down, and they will continue to come down unless we decide to do something far more drastic than we're doing. Iran is in big trouble. They have 300% inflation. The country is a mess, and the military is totally defeated.
Let me be clear. Until America's obligations in the Memorandum of Understanding, including lifting the blockade, releasing blocked assets, lifting oil sanctions, ending threats and military operations on all fronts, and other conditions that America has agreed to in the memorandum are implemented, the strait will not be opened. The enemy, in its new design, seeks economic pressure and the destruction of the country's cohesion. And today, U.S. government officials explicitly state this plan. They want to win the game by creating dissatisfaction and creating a rift within Iranian society, a game in which they have clearly lost so far in the military and diplomatic arenas.
اراده ملت و هماهنگی و همافزایی میدانهای نظامی و دیپلماسی و خدمت از این آزمون تاریخی سربلند بیرون خواهد آمد و نصرت الهی به طور حتم برای این مردم مجاهد محقق خواهد شد. امروز نیز بر اساس تکلیف تحقق شروط و تدابیری که رهبر معظم انقلاب تعیین کرده‌اند، با بکارگیری قدرت منطق و استفاده از منطق قدرت و با هماهنگی میدان دیپلماسی و میدان نظامی تلاش می‌کنیم که آمریکای متوهم را مجبور به پرداخت حقوق ملت ایران کنیم. و روشن بگویم تا زمانی که تعهدات آمریکا در تفاهمنامه از جمله رفع محاصره، آزادی اموال بلوکه شده، رفع تحریم نفت، پایان تهدید و عملیات نظامی در همه جبهه‌ها و دیگر شروطی که در تفاهمنامه آمریکا با آن متحد شده از اجرایی نشود، تنگه باز نخواهد شد. دشمن در طراحی جدید خود به دنبال فشار اقتصادی و از بین بردن انسجام کشور است و امروز مسئولین دولت آمریکا به صراحت بر این نقشه خود تصریح می‌کنند. آنها می‌خواهند با ایجاد نارضایتی و ایجاد شکاف داخل جامعه ایرانی برنده بازی باشند که تا اینجا در میدانهای نظامی و دیپلماسی به وضوح باختند.
The Iran war has entered another dangerous phase, and this time, Donald Trump is turning his threats not only toward Tehran, but toward a country that has long been one of Washington's closest partners in the Gulf. In a dramatic Fox News interview, Trump demanded that Iran surrender, warned that he was in no hurry to end the conflict, and threatened military action against Oman if Muscat interferes with efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The warning comes at a critical moment. A 60-day U.S. Iran Memorandum of Understanding has expired without a broader agreement to end the war, while diplomatic efforts over the Strait of Hormuz remain stuck. And there is now a strange three-way confrontation developing. Washington wants control over how commercial shipping moves through Hormuz. Iran insists that it retains sovereign rights over the waterway. And Oman is trying to negotiate directly with Tehran to create a mechanism that allows commercial vessels to pass safely. That is precisely where Trump has drawn a red line. In his Fox News interview, Trump said Iran should put up the white flag of surrender. He also confirmed that his administration has established a direct back channel with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. Trump described the IRGC as good poker players, but claimed they were now dying. Despite the escalation, Trump said he was not working toward a specific deadline. "I have no time schedule," he said. "I'm not in a hurry." That statement is significant because the United States and Iran had been operating under a 60-day framework intended to create space for negotiations on issues including sanctions relief and Iran's nuclear program. But the agreement has now expired, and neither side appears ready to simply revive it. Iran says the memorandum had already been effectively destroyed by what Tehran describes as major U.S. violations. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Bagher argued that the United States violated the understanding only weeks after it was signed. According to Tehran, negotiations therefore never properly began. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has also said Tehran has not yet decided whether to restart negotiations with Washington. So the diplomatic clock has run out. But the most explosive development may be happening around the Strait of Hormuz. The waterway is one of the world's most strategically important maritime choke points. It connects the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and the wider Arabian Sea. For years, it has been vital for global energy shipments. And since the current war began, the strait has become one of the central pressure points in the confrontation between Washington and Tehran. Iran has sought to control access through the waterway. The United States, meanwhile, has demanded that commercial shipping be allowed to move freely. Now Oman is attempting to bridge that gap. Iranian and Omani officials have spent weeks discussing a possible arrangement for shipping. On Monday, Tehran announced that the two countries had reached an understanding on the map of a proposed transit route. The final details are still being worked out, with the two sides preparing a joint declaration. Iranian officials say the mechanism is designed to protect the interests and sovereign rights of both Iran and Oman, while allowing commercial vessels to move safely through the strait. That sounds like a diplomatic solution. But Washington appears to see the situation very differently. Trump warned that if Oman gets in the way of a U.S. Iran agreement over Hormuz, the United States could attack the Gulf state. His language was extraordinarily blunt. "If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb the S out of them," Trump said. That threat is particularly striking because Oman is not an enemy of the United States. In fact, Muscat has traditionally played the role of mediator between Washington and Tehran. Oman has repeatedly been used as a diplomatic channel precisely because it maintains relations with both sides. So Trump's threat risks turning one of the region's most important mediators into another participant in the conflict. And there is another problem. Iran says the U.S. and Israel are trying to undermine the discussions between Tehran and Muscat. Bagher rejected the argument that the current deadlock is simply a problem of mediation. His position is that Iran has repeatedly faced pressure from Washington and has repeatedly refused to surrender its position. He pointed to decades of confrontation, from the 1953 coup to U.S. sanctions and Trump's earlier maximum pressure campaign. The message from Tehran is straightforward. Iran does not believe pressure will force it to negotiate on American terms. And that brings us to the military question. If diplomacy fails, how exactly does Washington reopen Hormuz? One possibility is direct military protection for commercial shipping. Brian Clark of the Hudson Institute has argued that the United States has limited options for forcing the issue without exposing American forces to serious risks. Air power alone, he argues, cannot guarantee safe passage through a heavily contested maritime choke point. To physically reopen the waterway, the U.S. Navy and Air Force would potentially have to actively protect commercial vessels. That means American forces could find themselves directly confronting Iranian forces around the strait. And that is where the crisis becomes extremely dangerous, because any clash around Hormuz could have consequences far beyond Iran and the United States. Oil markets are already reacting to the uncertainty. Brent crude has moved above $90 a barrel, as hopes for a quick reopening of the waterway fade. That matters because Hormuz is not simply another shipping lane. It is a critical artery for global energy supplies. Any prolonged disruption can push up transportation costs, fuel prices, and inflation far beyond the Middle East. And the situation is already showing signs of becoming more volatile. On Tuesday, a vessel traveling through the Strait of Hormuz was reportedly struck by an unknown projectile. The incident damaged its engine room and resulted in one casualty, according to the UK Maritime Trade Operations Agency. That means the threat around the waterway is no longer just diplomatic rhetoric. Meanwhile, Trump has escalated his own rhetoric even further. He has suggested that the United States could treat the Strait of Hormuz as American territory, a claim that would have enormous legal and geopolitical implications. Iran has responded by insisting that the waterway will remain Iranian. So both sides are now making maximalist claims, and that may be the biggest obstacle to a settlement. As analyst Brian Clark put it, the two governments are not really negotiating at this stage. They are making extreme demands and hoping the other side backs down. That leaves Oman in an extraordinarily difficult position. Muscat is trying to create a practical arrangement that gets ships moving. Iran wants its sovereignty recognized. Washington wants the strait reopened on terms it considers acceptable. And Trump is warning Oman not to obstruct that objective. The result is a diplomatic puzzle with very real military consequences. There is still a possible way out. Iran and Oman could finalize their transit arrangement. Washington could decide that reopening commercial shipping is more important than securing complete political control over the process. And Tehran could use the arrangement as a way to demonstrate that it can manage access to Hormuz without completely shutting the waterway. But right now, none of those outcomes is guaranteed. The 60-day agreement is gone. Trump is demanding Iranian surrender. Tehran is refusing to negotiate under pressure. Oman is caught between two powerful adversaries, and ships are already facing danger in the waterway. The Strait of Hormuz has therefore become much more than a dispute over shipping. It is now the central test of who can dictate the rules of the Gulf, Washington, Tehran, or some negotiated combination of the two. And with Trump threatening Oman, Iran refusing to back down, and commercial shipping still under pressure, the next move could determine whether this crisis finally moves toward diplomacy or toward an even wider war.